question, unang tanong ko po sa inyo. Sa tingin niyo po ba natural na parte ng kultura ng Pinoy yung pag-aaruga sa mga matatanda?
Probably we can parang have a definite answer on the question. Kasi kung natural, ibig sabihin if that is indigenous to our country. Kailangan, if you're going to review our history, we were colonized by the Spaniards for more than 300 years. Then we have the American colonization, and we have the short Japanese occupation in our country. But this is one thing, if you're going to review our history, there is a large Chinese settlements here in the Philippines before the Spaniards arrived here. So if you're going to look at on that particular point of view, then filial piety is part of Confucian tradition. And the Chinese are Confucianists, and at the same time they are Buddhist and they are Taoist. So it is filial piety, which is one basic principle of Confucianism. So multicultural naman yung Pilipinas eh. So if you're going to look at the Chinese community here in the Philippines, then it is naturally is rooted in their character before they migrated here in the Philippines. But what about the Malays? We don't know kasi there are less accounts on the Malays. But there is one thing. When the Spaniards arrived here in the Philippines, one thing that they brought with us is Catholicism. And Catholicism is very much di ba, value the concept of a patriarchal family. So it has something to do with the role of the father, then the mother is the ilaw ng tahanan. Tapos the children must have filial piety in the Catholic sense. So ibig sabihin, the Malays we don't know, but I think the Spaniards, they brought with us our understanding of a Spanish culture of filial piety. So probably the Spaniards brought us, for the majority of the Malays and indigenous Filipinos, the concept of what family is, then filial piety, and taking care of our elderly. The Malay probably, it has nothing to do with the concept of family. It has something to do with elderly in the community. But not a family setting, kasi they are household and they are divided into clans. But the concept of family must have come from the Chinese and for the Spanish colonizers.
So masasabi mo ba natin na yung kultura ng Pinoy na pag-aaruga sa mga matatanda is na-influence lang po galing sa iba't ibang kultura?
I think if you're going to read between the lines on my answer previously, then it is the Chinese who brought us the Confucian principle of filial piety. So the Filipino-Chinese community here in the Philippines and the pure-blooded Chinese here, probably in Binondo and scattered around in business areas, they have filial piety. So that is taking care of the elderly and at the same time is respecting the elderly, respecting their parents and obeying their parents. So that will extend to the time that they will die and even the time that they die because they need to revere their parents as an ancestor, di ba? What about the Spaniards? Of course, the Spaniards, di ba, they gave us God the Father, tapos they God the Son, and God the Son always follows the Father. So, ibig sabihin that is the filial piety of the Roman Catholicism. And we all know for a fact that the Philippines is a Roman Catholic country before the coming of the Americans. Di ba, the Americans brought us Protestantism. But, taking into the point of view, 333 years tayong sinakop ng mga Espanyol. So probably the influence will be more significant in our country. So we are more Catholic than Protestant. And in Catholicism, there is a very strong imposition of the concept of the family, tapos the elderly, and taking care of our family. So the family context was given to us by two. One is migrants and the other one is a colonizer. Even when you go to the Mexico, ganyan, South American country, very strict din yung ano nila, yung parang rule and principle nila, in taking care of their elderly. So because they were colonized by the Portuguese sa ng mga Spaniards, di ba? And they are both Catholic nations, di ba? Catholic colonizers. Unlike in America, di ba? They were British. Tapos in Canada, they were French. So they are less Catholic than the Spaniards sa Portuguese. Go to, East Timor. Study the culture of East Timor. They have the same culture just like the Filipinos. Why? Because they were colonized by the Portuguese. Portuguese are known as strict Catholics. Nakikita mo yung point. The Malays, I don't know kasi we have less references on that. But we have more references on In historical point of view, kasi mukhang root yung hinahanap.
So, doon po tayo sa second. Yung influensya po ng mga first world countries such as yung establishment po ng mga home for the aged. Sa tingin niyo po ba, ano po ba yung mga implikasyon nito sa ating kultura? Yung mga epekto nito sa kultura?
Sige, yun kaya nga dinidiscuss ko kanina. When the Americans came here in the Philippines and tried to bring us a new culture, which is called the cosmopolitan, saka the modern culture. So, parang it challenges the conservative culture that was passed to us by the Spaniards, di ba? So, the context of the family now do not extend to the lolos and lolas, do not extend to the titos and titas, do not extend to the pinsan. Kasi very practical ang way of life ng industrial nations. So the concept of family is limited to the nuclear family. So we have the mother and the father and the siblings. If there is one person that you must think of, it is not your mother or your father, but it is yourself. So it has something to do with the liberal principle. So liberal principle, all my parents are old enough to take care of themselves. And I am young enough to take care of myself. So they need to support me. But once I reach the age of 18, I can take care of myself now. So I can separate myself to them. So by the age of 18, there is already an idea of trying to get away from the family. So nawala yung family context. So will you take care of your elderly, your parents when they get old? Probably not. Kasi by the time that you are 18, it is given to you the certain understanding that you are an individual person, free, and you can decide for yourself. You are not indebted to anyone because it is the state that tells the parents to support you before you reach 18 years old. Once you reach 18 years old, it is the state and the society's culture that dictates you to get away from your parents. What if your parents would like you to stay at home and they wish to support you against your will? It is impossible. You can file a case against your own parents. Diba? What about if your parents get old? No, there are a lot of state institutions that will give them the support that they need. But there is no state mandate or cultural mandate that it is I, the child, who needs to support my aging parents. So that is the culture. Yan yung ayaw ko sa Western civilization. That is one thing that I don't love about Western civilization. The concept of individual freedom separates us from the very social group that nurtures us and gives us our personality, which is our family. I hope that is...
Sir, kung sa inyong perspective, sir, kung yung pagdating ng cosmopolitan culture sa Philippines, sa tingin niyo nagkaroon
Western
tayo...
and cosmopolitan.
Yes, sir. Nagkaroon ba tayo ng paradigm shift? Nagkaroon ba ng paradigm shift yung mga Filipinos? Doon sa kultura natin na pag-aaruga ng matatanda.
Teka, that is a macro ano na yan. It is very macro. So, it needs to be supported by researchers. But according to the references I read, probably you should ask, sino ba to? The one teaching Spanish? Si Senyor. Because Senyor wrote a book about what happened in the Philippines after World War II. He said that there is a psychological shift between our understanding of what being a Filipino is and what is being not a Filipino during, after World War II. Why? Kasi diba 1901, we have the Americans. So there is a benevolent assimilation and there is a transfer of culture. We can't have that after a year. Probably the fruit of what they saw will happen a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, or 4 decades after. So it is 1901, so World War II ended 1946. So they have a new breed of Filipino now, which is called the Americanized Filipinos. And those Americanized Filipinos now live in urban areas. And probably those who got a paradigm shift. But I don't think that those who are living in the rural area, they have a paradigm shift. Because the influence is not so intense in the rural area. The influence only is, so in macro approach, so we should limit the answer to the question. Probably those who have a paradigm shift, those who live in cosmopolitan setting, in an urban setting, but not in a rural setting. Kasi if you go to the provinces now, di ba they still have that quote-unquote is the conservative understanding that we should take care of our elderly. But in urban areas, di ba, probably there is very few individuals. So there is where paradigm shift is.
Sa tingin niyo, sir, ano yung nag-urge sa isang family? Ano yung nag-uudyok sa isang family na dalhin yung elderly nila sa home for the aged, sa perspective?
My thesis when I was in college, BS Sociology in PUP, is an institutional analysis of home for the aged. That is why I love to answer your questions. Because what I heard there is one historian, and probably I see myself in the future as the person, because he was a very good historian in one prominent university, one of the cases that I interviewed. He was born in an urban setting. So he was born in an urban setting, he lived an urban life, he lived a cosmopolitan life. And the culture that was transferred to the children is urban and cosmopolitan. And the time that he aged, he was not taken care of by the children because they probably ran away from the burden of economic burden here in the Philippines. So they migrated abroad. So who took care of him? So it will be the home for the aged. If you're going to home for the aged, most of those who are interned there, they do not come from a rural setting. They come from urban setting. And that is one of my realization after my thesis. The title of my thesis is Pagsasara sa Tabing ng Drama ng Buhay. Because I think that when we age, diba, it is the time that we are closing our curtains to our audiences. And most of those I interviewed, and the cases that I interviewed, they come from urban setting. Very few come from the rural setting. Those who come from rural setting, they migrated here in Manila. Tapos they raised their children here in Manila. So the culture that was carried by their children is not culture of the rural area. It is urban culture pa doon.
So can you explain to us the relevance of living in an urban area sa ano necessary na magtrabaho sa mga ganyan, sa home for the aged? Parang yung relevance.
Magtrabaho o to be interned there?
Parang ganun siya. Mag-intern sa ano po, I mean, dun, ano po yung kinalaman ng pagtira nila sa urban area sa pag-intern nila? Ano po yun?
And probably you can answer that by yourself. Whenever you wake up, di ba, you need peso sign. Tapos, because you need to open your faucet, and once you open your faucet, then the bill is running for you, and you will have that at the end of the month, di ba? When you wake up, then you will turn off your electric fan, then you are going to turn off the light, but you need to open your TV. So the electricity is running for you. And after a month, you will be given your bill. Diba? You can't eat without buying for it. So you need to work for it. If I will have my parents with me, living with me, then that will be additional food to eat. But I don't have much money to spend for my wife and for my children, then I will have them as a burden. And another thing, there are a lot of health issues on the elderly, so I need to pay for their medication. I can't pay for the medication of my wife, nor the medication of my child. Why should I pay for the medication of my aging parents? But in rural areas, they are going to work for it. But in urban setting, no, they will not. In rural areas, kasi life is very simple. Life revolves around the family, life revolves around the community. If you're going to review Emily Durkheim, he sees that as a mechanical solidarity. Ibig sabihin, once you are one with the community, and the community works as one, and once the community works as one, you can't separate yourself with the community and with your family. But in an urban setting, it is organic solidarity. Organic, ibig sabihin, it is dissolvable. Once you realize that your family is a burden to you, you can just dissolve the relationship and get away from them. But that is impossible in rural setting. Kasi the rural setting will tell you that you are one with your family, you are one with your community, and you are one with them until you die. But here in Manila, I will just transfer from one apartment to another. I can just leave my parents from one apartment to another, and I can live alone. Once I have my own family, I will live on my own. And I will take care of my family. I don't care about you. Probably my brother or my sister can take care of you. If they can't, they are bad sisters and bad brothers. Because they are not understanding my situation. I am economically incapable to take care of my parents. So they should take care of that because they have more money than I.